Good afternoon. I'm calling to order this meeting of the Health, Environment, and Community Engagement Committee. My name is Cam Gordon. I'm chair of the committee, and today I'm joined by Andrew Johnson, Alondra Cano, Jacob Fry, and Elizabeth Glidden. Lisa Bender won't be joining us today, but we are a quorum of the committee, so we can hold the committee and conduct our business. There's 2 items on our agenda today. Both are discussion items coming from the Neighborhood and Community Relations Department. The first is receiving and filing a presentation on the process to update the city's American with Disabilities Act transition plan to be released for a 30-day public comment period and to come back for City Council adoption in October. The second is adopting our revised community participation program guidelines. So we'll move on to item number 1, and Mr. Rubador is here to make a presentation. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Gordon and committee members. Good afternoon. I'm David Rubador, Director of the Neighborhood and Community Relations Department with the City of Minneapolis. And I'm going to be co-presenting today with Nick No, who is one of our staff members that has been working on the revised plan, Americans with Disabilities Act plan that is before you today. Specifically, the request, as the chair has mentioned, for the committee today is to receive and file the draft ADA action plan and also release it out for public comment, with the idea that it would be after the public comment period. We will be considering those comments and then bringing back a final revised plan later in September for council approval and adoption. The things that, overview of the presentation today is I'll spend a couple of minutes just talking a little bit about the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, and the role of NCR in that process. And then Mr. No will get up and talk about the evaluation process that we conducted at the city, and then also what's included in the plan and the components of the plan, to go a little bit more in detail on that. So the Americans with Disabilities Act was actually passed in 1990 and is actually one of 2 major civil rights laws that really affect the work of the city. The second is the Limited English Proficiency Plan, which the City Council adopted a revised, updated version of that just a few months ago, or actually about 6 months ago, which we call the Language Access Plan. When the Americans with Disabilities Act was first passed in 1990, the city completed an evaluation of then what was primarily the physical inventory of the city properties, basically the physical space where the city conducts business, and put together a transition plan that was adopted in 1993. What you see before you today is an update to that existing plan from 1993 to do a reevaluation of the leased and owned properties within the city. But in addition to that, it includes the work that Public Works has done around a revaluation of the city's right-of-ways, in addition to programs and services component of how the city does business. And basically, there's been so many changes with technology and improvements around accessibility since the original plan was adopted in 1993, that what you see before you, even though it's a revision of the original plan, is actually a significant update to our work. The ADA, as you're well aware, is really intended to prohibit discrimination and ensure equal opportunity for persons with disabilities, and really is comprised of 5 different titles. The first title is around employment, which our Human Resources Department actually takes care of. That's not included in this plan. And the second one is around state and local government, which is the primary gist of the plan that you have before you. NCR oversees the Title II work for the city for programs and service delivery, and we work in very close collaboration with the Public Works Department around public right-of-way access, as well as property services around the building, the physical space, both owned and leased properties within the city. So we have worked together to put together this revised plan that you see before you. The NCR role, just to talk a little bit more specifically about that, when the NCR department was created in roughly around 2010, the responsibility of Title II, Americans with Disabilities Act Title II, work moved into our department, along with the language access work, the Limited English Proficiency Plan. It's really a good fit for us. Our mission really fits with the overall goals of ADA, which is about removing barriers to participation and public access to our programs and services. We also, because we're located in the coordinator department, serve a really special role of being able to work with many city departments to provide the resources in order to be able to manage ADA on a collective citywide basis. And since our inception and working with on the ADA, we have really refocused the work of the city's ADA work to be more systems based and really improving systems so that our work around ADA does not just fall upon one single person or a couple people, that we build improvements within our enterprise that will really support ADA for the long run. Since doing that, I should also mention on the overview with the NCR department, the role of the Title II coordinator. Every city is required to have an ADA Title II coordinator. That responsibility rests with me, and that's part of one of my roles and responsibilities as being the director of neighborhood and community relations. Since we have taken on this work in 2010, we made this a high priority, and it's been spending a great deal of time of really supporting improving the city's ADA work. We've been working very closely with the Minneapolis Advisory Council on People with Disabilities, have a great working relationship with them. We've enhanced the 311 support for reporting grievances. We were before believing that the number of ADA-related grievances coming into the city were being underreported. And after some training and some work with 311 in a very cooperative setting, we were able to get the reporting mechanisms and the understanding of what's actually an ADA complaint versus a different type of information inquiry cleared up. And we are now getting regular ADA-related complaints or concerns into our department and working directly with the constituents to get those resolved. We have also been able to establish what's called the accessibility network. So we have point people in 18 of the city departments. There's 19 people on this liaison network. These are our point people that really work with each department within the departments to really address ADA concerns. They also provide the language access support for those departments. Again, the idea here is to build a system-wide approach to really be able to support ADA as an ongoing consideration as the city does its program and service development and delivery. In that liaison network, they've been meeting quarterly now, where we do trainings. We have discussions around various issues and stuff that are going on within each of the departments. The third thing that we have completed is we've been doing an extensive amount of training. As of now, I think we have a little over 90 people that have been trained around web content accessibility guidelines, which is an ADA standard, as well as accessible documents. So we've been doing a lot of training with city staff, particularly around the use of PDFs and trying to use PDFs in a more accessible way. So again, these are systems types of improvements. We also completed anniversary celebration last summer for the 25th year of the ADA and really raised awareness around that also. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. No, who's going to talk about, in addition to the other systems improvements that we've been doing, last year we were able to conduct an extensive evaluation of the city's program and service delivery, and he can talk about the results of that evaluation and that what led to the development of this plan, as well as the connections with Public Works and Property Services. Chair Gordon.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair Gordon, council members. Thank you, Director Rubidor. My name is Nick Neal, and I am the ADA and Language Access Coordinator for the Neighborhood and Community Relations Department. Today, I'll be walking with you through the ADA action plan itself, as well as our steps to developing it and the strategies within it. So what the plan is, as Director Rubidor has mentioned, is it's an update to the 1993 ADA transition plan. This is a very significant body of work, and I think it's something that the community as well as the committee has put a lot of effort into. First off, it's a very comprehensive policy document with components to comply with Title II of the ADA. The legal requirements are set by the Department of Justice, and within our plan, we demonstrate how the city enterprise itself has the components to manage those legal requirements. Secondly, it has the enterprise policies, procedures, and practices for inclusion of people with disabilities. We want to take a step forward in making sure that our program and service delivery, as well as decision-making processes, is accessible to everyone. And then, as Director Rubidor has mentioned, the plan has identified enhancements and strategies to improve our programs and services to make sure that it's accessible to everyone. Along with the system improvements that were mentioned, the most identifiable one is our ADA evaluation. We've done three evaluations within the last 5 years, 2 of them in 2015 as well as Public Works in 2012. This actually is a proactive approach from us here at the city. It shows our commitment to not only the ADA, but people with disabilities. Very quickly, I want to touch on property services and public works. Their evaluation process is really around the bricks and mortars, around what the Department of Justice as well as the ADA prescribes for access to programs and services through a physical standpoint. The evaluation that NCR did this last year is around programs and services. From the very beginning, we hired a consultant to come in and to review our programs and services, and we briefed the council members early summer as well as department directors on what the evaluation process is. We worked with 15 different departments to really review what their program and service delivery models are, how people with disabilities are included with that, and then steps to assuring that if there is a barrier, what they do to accommodate those particular deficiencies. From that work, we actually met with additionally with property services and public works to coordinate that approach together in order to have an enterprise plan to ensure that our program and service delivery, as well as our decision-making processes, is accessible to all. From that work, what Public Works and Property Services has identified is a 10-year for property services and 30-year process for Public Works to modify and improve physical deficiencies under what we own here at the city. What we have in front of you today is a 3-year plan to enhance our program and service delivery and enhance strategies as well. The recommended enhancements that we propose in this plan really touches on the emerging trends, as Director Rubador has mentioned, in terms of how residents could access program and services, how it's effectively delivered to them, and how they could participate in our decision-making processes here at the city. First off is through information gathering as well as access to what we do here in the city. And 301 is a very large department where residents contact for information on what we do here as well as issues regarding where they live in the city. Their mobile app has been a very great instrument for residents to utilize as a resource. However, we found that people with assistive devices or software are unable to access them. 301 has worked tremendously within this last year to update the app to make sure that it's accessible to all. It's ready to roll out by the end of the year. Another enhancement is with the city clerk's office to ensure that people know where to go and request assistive listening devices if they want to participate in city council meetings or any other public hearings that takes place in this council chamber here. Another really incredible enhancement is with communications, ensuring that people that are hard and deaf of hearing or with hearing impairments are able to participate in our decision-making processes as well as public hearings. Their enhancement is around captioning of public hearings and meetings that are streamed online through our services. And then with the Office of Emergency Management, their plan is around how to effectively engage as well as communicate emergency situations that the city faces through natural as well as man-made disasters and where to go for assistance in those circumstances. Another large improvement is with our digital presence. IT has set forth a very robust plan in how to improve our digital content as well as website to ensure that people are able to access what they need to understand what a program and service we do here at the city is and then how to participate in that. And then through NCR itself, as Director Rubador has mentioned, we do a lion's share of making sure that we provide the support to other departments to know what those legal requirements are, how to comply, and how to effectively engage and include people with disabilities within their programs and services. And lastly, with regulatory services, we wanted to make sure that the materials, letters, and that they're sending out provides access points for them, for the resident to contact them, or or the entry point to participate, not to participate, but to learn about what the regulatory letters are being sent to them is about.
Could I just ask about the IT issue?
Sure.
Because I know in the report it said there were a slew of limitations and problems, and just to understand what the biggest problem seemed to be with the website. Is it that people couldn't listen, get it audio, text to audio, or whatever? I mean, that's just an example that came to my mind. But
Chair Gordon, council members, as Director Rubidor has mentioned, we have done training around what's known as the Web Content Accessibility Guide. That is a very, very robust standard that is recognized by the Access Board. And they have different levels of compliance and accessibility. Where we are right now with our compliance level, it indicates that people utilizing an assistive device or software, or anyone that is just using the regular program components, the web pages are not structured where those devices or software is able to read through them or recognize what is within them. The levels of issues varies depending on the page and which department manages them, but it could be as easy as just regular coding to make sure that the heading level is a primary subject line, and then the content follows it. Or it could be a matter of tagging the images to ensure that people know what the image is about, or the visuals with graphing or visual representation of data. Or it could be our PDFs that they're not accessible. So it's a number of issues that that falls under this particular digital piece. Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Yes. Along with our evaluation, we found that there are a number of departments that has no required corrective actions, and we did list that within our plan. However, the departments that are listed with no need for policy modification or enhancements, we want to stress and indicate that they still will be subject to a lot of the systems approaches and training and enhancements that NCR and other departments are rolling out, such as accessible PDFs and managing their web content to make sure that it's accessible to people with disabilities. And along with that, enhancing our services to make sure that if there are points of accommodation, they know what to do or the resources behind that. At this point, we are bringing the plan to you as a draft. We're asking for it to be released. Our timetable for the next 2 months is to go through this 30-day comment period, engaging the Minneapolis Advisory Committee on People with Disabilities, working with the Neighborhood Community Engagement Commission, and then bringing the plan itself to the Senior Advisory Committee as well, and other stakeholders to ensure that everyone has an equal opportunity to weigh in on what the plan stresses about, and then we will make the required changes and bring the plan back to the HEC or this committee in September. Our goal is to bring it through the process for formal adoption by October. Chair Gordon, council members, at this point, this concludes my part of the presentation, and I yield the floor to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilmember Glidden has a question.
This is more just a kind of practical, who are all of our clients in terms of giving recommendations and advice. And with something like this, what is our relationship with the park board? So clearly the park board has a lot of its own funds a lot of its own internal functions. However, it is a department of the city under the city charter, despite the fact it has independent leadership by an elected commission. And so what's our responsibility to reach out to the park board, perform the same type of ADA evaluation, and consult with them?
Chair Gordon, Council Vice President Glidden, the park board actually embarked on their own ADA evaluation within this last year. They did 2 types of evaluation. One of their physical structures, recreation centers, playgrounds, to ensure that they identify the physical deficiencies behind them. Secondly, they brought on the same consultant to review their programs and services, and they will be concluding that work relatively soon. NCR has been working with the park board since the beginning of our evaluation process to understand where they are at, and then the plans that they will be developing under their evaluation. The park board also has their access and outreach manager be a consistent member or guest at the advisory committee for people with disabilities. So we have been working with them and staying abreast with what they're doing under their ADA realm as well. They will be bringing their own plans to their park board commissioners, and they will be presenting their own recommended enhancements and improvements as well.
Okay, that sounds great. So are they presenting their reports in any kind of public forum or with their capital needs, or how's that working?
Chair Gordon, Council Vice President Glenn, I'm not quite sure of the details of what format or medium they'll be presenting their recommendations. As far as I know, they'll be going through their process and presenting to their board as well. There are a few overlapping areas where we plan to work on, such as their website presence and then creating accessible materials as well. The details of that is still being worked on. We haven't moved too far past step one, but as we work out those details, we'll bring updates back to this committee.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
I don't see any other questions.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. And our action here is just to receive and file the presentation, and we'll be gathering comment now for 30 days, and it'll come back to the committee in late September for adoption, hopefully by the council in October. So I will move what we receive and file this. Seeing no discussion on that, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries then. And now we're ready to move on to our second and final item for the committee, and this is adoption of the revised community participation program guidelines. And Mr. Joseph, the Deputy Director for Neighborhood and Community Relations, will be making that report. This may be the first time you've reported to the committee, so welcome. Glad to have you here.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Donald Joseph. I'm the Deputy Director of the NCR Department within the City of Minneapolis. And today I'm going to present to you the revised Community Participation Program Guidelines, as well as the 2017 to 2019 allocations. My ask today of the committee is to approve the revised CPP guidelines, to approve the 2017 to 2019 allocations, and to authorize the city officials in entering the contracts as it relates to the administration of this program. So to give you a high-level overview of the major policy changes, this was mainly driven by a push to more democratic principles in our neighborhoods, removing barriers that prevented voters from participating in their respective processes, and also being eligible to participate in their respective neighborhood governing structures. Second, we are implementing publicly accepted standards and principles that are not pie in the sky, things that we came out of nowhere. They're not transformational in nature. They're actually very much common among non-for-profits across the United States, as they are truly operational in nature. And third, we now can say that we have the ability to initiate an NCR review if we feel there's a need, given noncompliance with our CPP guidelines. So I'll talk about that a little bit more in the presentation. So taking a deeper dive into the major policy changes, we wanted to be a lot more intentional about the program's purpose. So we do feel that neighborhoods are in a unique position to not only cultivate involvement, but to also attract leadership in historically underrepresented groups in the city. We also felt that it was important to recognize that neighborhoods do a good job of creating a sense of place. And we feel that it's important to recognize that, because, in fact, there's a sense of pride, there's a sense of a belonging that comes with your neighborhood, representing your own respective residents, and doing that within the city at large. Moving on to the adoption of public standards and principles, this again is something that we feel is going to be very helpful in having alignment on some operational matters that we think are of concern to all our neighborhoods. And I'm just going to read them off here. The Minnesota Council of Non-for-Profits, Principles for Nonprofit Organizations, and also the Charitable Review for Council Accountability Standards. We saw some natural overlap between these two in the areas of financial activity, fundraising, and governance, to name a few. The Roberts Rules of Order, newly revised, is specifically around group decision-making and conducting meetings that could be leveraged for any organization, whether they are law-making bodies such as this one, corporate entities, or non-for-profits. The additional standards and expectations just gets to committee participation, meetings, membership, establishing membership, and also governance for board meetings. Moving forward to the next item, this one is going to be a little bit controversial, given the fact that it's going to compel neighborhoods to actually adjust their bylaws moving forward. So what we did was that we looked at the many neighborhood organizations. What we wanted to do is ensure that every neighborhood organization actually had both a voter ID requirement and also a non-photo ID requirement as well. They actually could have both per the Minnesota statute for non-for-profits. We also wanted to address some of the things that limited board eligibility, such as whether or not you were in attendance rather, at previous meetings, how long you actually have had membership. We are now saying that you are eligible as long as you're a member, and you are a member as long as you are a resident in a neighborhood. So whether that you've been a resident for 20, 10, 5 years, 1 month, it doesn't matter. You are eligible to actually run for election for your respective board. So as I mentioned before, committee, the NCR initiated review allows us to go in and look at records for our respective neighborhoods, whether that's their financial records, accounting records, their minutes, their agendas, and so forth. Eligible use of funds, as we are responsible for Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act federal law here, because we provide public funds to neighborhoods, we are mandated, federally mandated, to also provide education and training awareness to our neighborhoods so they could actually be in a better position to address their own ADA compliance matters. We also wanted to be very specific that they could use their CPP funds to be in compliance with ADA. I think you all have copies of the forward-looking 3-year allocations for the 2017 to 2019 period. What we did per the revisions is that we put in an actual floor. Going forward on an annual basis, no neighborhood would receive anything less than a $25,000 annual allocation. In the past, per the allocation formula, it was possible that a neighborhood would actually get an annual allocation of less than $25,000, which we all deemed was insufficient. One other thing, as it relates to, there were several challenges related to having a group policy for directors and officers insurance. Some of that was industry driven. Some of that was due to lawsuit risk. We felt that it was, going forward, it was important for neighborhoods to take out their own individual directors and officers insurance. We are going to cover the cost of their annual premiums per the allocation. It amounts to $900. And anything they do that would raise those insurance premiums would be their responsibility. Moving on to the clarified and improved process for neighborhood priority plans, we do feel that neighborhoods are critical in working with their residents, all their residents, to address those specific opportunities and issues that should be looked at in earnest. So where we come in, we work with neighborhoods to come up with neighborhood priority plans. This is going to, we are there as their neighborhood support team to basically say, okay, if this is what you want to do, how could we basically bolster your efforts? Do we have to bring in other members of the city into the fold? Because we feel that at the end of the day, we want the city to be a place where everyone could live, work, learn, and play. We want livability to be something that could be found anywhere across the city. So just to give you a quick bird's eye view of the CPP allocations for the next 3-year period, we're in the ballpark of 12.32 million. Funds are allocated on a need-based formula. If you were to look at it and see, for example, that per the weighting system, 40% is actually allocated to underrepresented communities within neighborhoods. So it gets at that equity piece. And funds, as you probably all know, can be used for anything from community outreach to communication, newsletters, and the implementation of their neighborhood plans. So I just wanted to give you a timeline of what led us to today. In January and February, the NCR department decided to review the guidelines that we had, and we then drafted some initial changes. During the March-April timeframe, we received some initial feedback not only from neighborhood organizations, but the NCEC and also the NRP Policy Board. What we did in the May-July timeframe, we opened up a 45-day review period that closed on June 20th, where we gave all neighborhoods the opportunity to comment and actually put in the actual document their changes. We met with the NCEC on June 20th to review those changes, and last week we met with the NRP Policy Board. We are now in the process. We're now in the phase of the process, the July-August timeframe, where we are meeting with you all today, and we're in the approval process that finalizes with City Council. So, in conclusion, again, we're asking the committee to approve the revised CPP guidelines and its related allocations for the next 3 years, and to authorize city officials to entering into any contracts to make this all work. So that concludes my presentation, and I am available for any questions you may have. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the presentation and all the information, and I'm very supportive of the changes to the guidelines too. I did have a question though about the allocations. So the 3-year allocations and the minimum is $25,000 a year, but there were 2 neighborhoods that seemed to get less than that when I looked at the allocation, and I was curious about why that might have happened. So Page, it looks like Page is getting $39,930 and Hale is getting $68,000, and I was expecting the minimum would be $75,000 and lots are getting $75,000. So I don't know if that's something we can double check.
Chair Gordon, could you just repeat those figures again? Because you said 75 and then you said 2 other figures.
Right. So looking at the appendix, when I got to Page, it says their total is $39,930.
Right.
And it looks like it was for a 3-year allocation.
So if I'm not mistaken, that the allocations that you're seeing, yes, are for the next 3 years, and basically you sum them up and you did 25 times 3. Is that correct? Well, it looks like someone else was doing 25 times 3 when we got to Cedar Isles and Bryn Mawr. $75,000 was looking like the minimum, but when we got to Page and Hale, theirs was less than $75,000.
So that's why I was just
Okay.
curious.
So-
I thought there might be a good explanation, or not,
Okay.
we could fix it.
So if you don't mind, committee, can I defer to my colleague, Debbie Rubidor?
Absolutely,
Okay.
of course.
Chair Gordon and committee members, thank you. Just to clarify, it's $25,000 per neighborhood organization. So in the case of Hale Page Diamond Lake, you would add the three together, which would exceed $25,000 per year. So it's $25,000 minimum per organization.
Okay, that's interesting.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, except that they get listed as if they're a neighborhood. And then later down, there's multi-neighborhood totals that get listed. So I was, so then it looks like we have an HPDL that comes in at 200, and that might be Hale Page Diamond Lake, I'm thinking.
Chair Gordon, that is correct.
So I don't have to belabor it necessarily here, and now I'll have to go back and try to add up the four and see if it averages to 75. But it just, that might be something we'll have to explain to Paige and Hale when they come back in and saying, I thought it was 25,000 and we're not getting that for are they a neighborhood or are they a neighborhood organization? Is Hale Page Diamond Lake one organization?
Chair Gordon, Hale Page Diamond Lake is one organization. So you would take the three neighborhood allocations together, and that's why at the bottom where it says HPDL would be the total for that organization. So the minimum floor is $25,000 per organization. So where you have multiple neighborhoods, you would have to add all three together.
Okay, I think it's making sense. And we just lucked out with some of the other multiple neighborhood organizations because all the individual organizations came in higher than 75,000 on their own. So the anomaly was only those two.
Chair Gordon and committee members, the chance of anybody being below $25,000 is really just going to be when it's one neighborhood when it's one neighborhood in an organization. But we'll double check these numbers and make sure.
Yeah,
it's correct.
and it's making more sense to me now. So I appreciate you taking the time to look at that. Councilmember Fry also has a question, and then Councilmember Connell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First question was regard to the neighborhood elections. So you had mentioned that there's some sort of federal and/or state law that maybe I misheard you, but that states that neighborhoods are allowed to have some sort of voter identification required along with the ability to vote.
Councilmember Fry, so if I wasn't clear, and I apologize if I
Yeah.
wasn't, what we tried to do was ensure that we were aligned to the Minnesota not-for-profit statute that says a neighborhood organization could actually have a voter ID requirement as long as they also have a non-photo ID option as well.
Oh, I understand. Okay, so we are continuing to allow the voter ID requirement so long as it's in compliance with the state statute that doesn't require it to be a photo. Is that right?
Correct. As long as
Okay.
you have both options available, you are actually in compliance with the state statute, if that makes sense. Okay, go ahead.
Chair Gordon, if I may step in to
Yes.
clarify. So yes, we are, Councilmember Fry, we are making this in compliance with state law. Basically, to cut to the chase on this, a neighborhood organization cannot have just a photo ID way of verifying eligibility for voting. They can use a photo ID as one of the ways, but they also have to have a non-photo ID method as well. And what we did in the guidelines is we included the language directly from the state law, but then just to clarify, we added an additional sentence, there must be a non-photo ID method available to establish voter eligibility.
Okay.
So you have to have both.
Including-
You could choose not to use any photo ID whatsoever,
Right.
but if you choose to use a photo ID, you have to have a non-photo ID method as well.
Okay, so if you don't have the photo ID, then you could still use, for instance, a utility bill or something.
Chair Gordon and Councilmember Fry, yes, if you do not have a photo ID, the neighborhood must provide a different way for you to verify residency that doesn't require a photo ID.
Okay.
We didn't define what that would be. We left that up to the neighborhoods, but it could be a utility bill, it could be vouching, whatever system they want to use that they feel is appropriate. But we wanted to make sure there was a non-photo ID method there, which is what the state law states needs to be in place.
So they can allow for vouching. Are we requiring that vouching be one of the options available?
Chair Gordon and Councilmember Fry, we're not specifying any non-photo ID method,
Okay.
but they have to have one. So we're going to leave it up to them to decide what that is, but we're not going to, because we didn't want to get into stating you have to do vouching, whatever the situation is. We just wanted to make sure that there was both options were available. So we wanted to make sure that if you were a resident in the neighborhood and you didn't bring a photo ID, you could still vote, but they have to on their meeting notification identify what methods they're using to establish residency.
Okay.
And so you would know that in advance. So whether it's a utility bill, whether it's a vouching system, whatever they use, you would know about that before you got there, and then you could be prepared to do that. Or if they wanted to have a photo ID, they can have that, but they have to have a non-photo ID method.
I mean, so the issue that I'm concerned about is the neighborhood specifying some random form of identification that many people don't have easy access to. You know, a utility bill may be easy. It may be also very difficult if that's the mechanism that they're definitively saying is the one that they're choosing. So, you know, my concern is if they're given an alternative, that there probably shouldn't just be one alternative. There probably should be several.
So if you want to see where this comes up on the draft, it's on page 9. And it's the second bullet from the bottom. It also says that they may be on a pre-existing membership list. So once you're signed up, presumably, and you're on the membership list, that can be made available. So, and I'm particularly calling it out to your attention in case you want to review it, to add something, you know, make it to help. And maybe we can't do it at the committee either, but there's an opportunity that we could strengthen that section and clarify that this must include some kind of vouching, if that's what you're thinking of, or a utility bill or a lease. You could list some things that must be acceptable, maybe. I mean, I think that I'm open to getting this right. So I appreciate you drilling in on this issue. It certainly is an issue that we hear about, and I've heard about at neighborhood organizations as they're trying to figure out how do they manage this situations they're dealing with and elsewhere.
And so, and then my second, so I'm going to look at this as soon as I stop asking questions,
okay,
to figure out a read or a minor edit. But then, so I think I heard this correctly, but we are now preventing neighborhoods from having an attendance requirement in order to vote?
Yes.
Okay.
Chair Gordon and Councilmember Fry, that requirement was actually in place before, that if you showed up at the annual meeting, you could vote. So that's already there. What we're eliminating at this point is putting restrictions on board eligibility. So if you wanted to run for a board member or being on a board of an organization, being a member, which is just simply being a resident of the neighborhood, makes you eligible to run for the board, regardless of any other criteria.
Being a member of the neighborhood. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Kano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just kind of jumping in here to this conversation and presentation. I'm curious to know how many more years do we have left in the CPP funding cycle for future years?
Chair Gordon and Councilmember Kano, the purposes behind today's conversation was not to address anything that happens through 2020. But that is something that we, in my last conversation with David Rubador, we are looking to work with not only City Coordinator's Office and Finance on determining what would be funding streams beyond 2020. That's something that we're thinking about, we're going to be very mindful of in the coming days, weeks, months. And I don't know.
So we actually directed at our last committee meeting, and the council approved directing staff to return early next year, I think it was January 2017, with options for future funding after 2020. Mm-hmm. So these allocations will probably be the last allocations off of this funding mechanism.
Chair,
one more year.
Councilmember Connell, to answer your question directly, 4 years are left. This allocation will take us through 2019, and then there's one more year funded under the consolidated TIP, which is not covered by these guidelines. That will still be yet to address. And then also to Mr. Joseph's point, then we'll have a conversation about what funding continues after that particular point. But this will cover 3 of the 4 years.
And what other active funding streams do we have outside of the CPP, or is this the only active funding stream for neighborhoods?
Chair Gordon, Councilmember Kano, this is the only funding stream that we use to fund neighborhood organizations. Currently, a number of neighborhoods still have NRP funds that are left over, but that fund is not being capitalized anymore. The capitalization of that program stopped in 2009, but some of them do have funds that they're continuing to spend under that. But as far as current active funding, this is the only program from the city.
Thank you.
I see Councilmember Fry is madly working on a potential amendment here. So I guess
I think I've got it.
Are you ready with something?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
So as it's presently drafted, this is in line 5 of page 9 under annual meeting and board elections. It states, there are two mechanisms to vote. One, they're on the pre-existing membership list, or two, at a meeting of the neighborhood organization can produce a Minnesota driver's license, Minnesota identification card, or some form of residency verification that indicates the individual resides within the geographic boundaries of the neighborhood. So far, we haven't stated that the neighborhood can pick one of those options. It is in the next line, however, that they say neighborhood organizations must provide a non-photo ID method. By saying they must provide a non-photo ID method, that indicates it could be one, and that's satisfactory. So all I'm doing is changing it to say neighborhood organizations must accept non-photo ID methods, plural, for establishing residency.
Chair Gordon and Councilmember Fry, I think that's a great recommendation, suggestion. That's something that we could definitely look at. I think that keyword acceptance, I think, definitely changes the interpretation of those statements. I couldn't agree more.
So so then I will go ahead and move that we change the word provide to accept. We delete the word a. And then
We got it.
we add an S at the end of methods.
Okay.
Do I need to move?
So moved. Seeing no discussion on that, all in approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, then on the plan as amended, any discussion on that? Probably not actually called a plan. The guidelines as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Guidelines are then approved, and we'll go to the full council. And then on the allocation of the funds as presented, any discussion on that? Seeing none, then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say no. That motion carries as well. And is there a third item we're supposed to vote on, Madam Clerk? Or did I cover it all? You guys.
Well, Chair Gordon, if
what's
that's
the
all you
third?
see in the documents,
I'm
Yeah.
still digging out the page 1 of my.
Peggy has something for you.
Yes.
Okay.
Authorizing appropriate city officials to enter
Yes.
into contracts consistent. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll move that authorization then of appropriate city officials to enter into contracts consistent with the approved CPP guidelines. Seeing no discussion on that, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Seeing none, that motion also carries. So then I believe our business is now concluded and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, committee.